Hello, and welcome to the Gravel Ride podcast, where we go deep on the sport of gravel cycling through in-depth interviews with product designers, event organizers, and athletes who are pioneering the sport. I'm your host, Craig Dalton, a lifelong cyclist who discovered gravel cycling back in 2016 and made all the mistakes you don't need to make. I approach each episode as a beginner to unlock all the knowledge you need to become a great gravel cyclist. This week on the podcast, we welcome Erwin Verveken. He's a former professional cyclocross rider from Belgium and one of the organizers of the UCI World Gravel Championships series. He's been involved in the sport of cycling over 20 years and has played a key role in the development of the UCI Gravel Series. I thought it was important to get a European's perspective on the race series and how it fits into the global gravel cycling scene. Obviously, when UCI got involved a few years ago, there was a lot of rumbling from the gravel community about how it might change the sport. I think you'll see from Erwin's perspective that he understands the global context of gravel racing, and it will be interesting to see how the World Series of Gravel evolves over the coming years. What's for sure is that in 2023, the U.S. team, both on the men's and women's side, really seemed to enjoy the event. And I think it holds a more important place in professional riders' calendars in 2024. And obviously, let's not discount the fact that masters riders and other age group category riders can also go to the Gravel World Championships and represent our country. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. But before we dive in, I do need to thank this week's sponsor, Dynamic Cyclist. Just before stepping into the studio, I was lamenting my slightly sore lower back and thinking I need to pop open the Dynamic Cyclist app and jump into one of the routines. If you're not familiar with Dynamic Cyclist, it's a company that has been focused on video-based stretching and strengthening routines for a handful of years now. They've got a vast catalog of content from kind of a general progression series that can benefit any cyclist to some injury specific sequences. So if you've got a low back problem, there's a 6-week low back focus. And it's a mixture of the things you need to do. Obviously, there's stretching in there, but there's also a little core work and some of the other things that honestly will help put you in a much, much better position for your gravel cycling objectives in 2024. I know I'm stepping up my game. I have plans to sign up for a lot longer event than I've ever done before. And I know it's probably less concerning about how my legs will perform and more concerning how the rest of my body will perform. So I'm definitely digging into the Dynamic Cyclist content catalog and really trying to make the time. Everything is less than 15 minutes. So honestly, I've got no excuse, nor do you. Speaking of no excuses, head on over to dynamiccyclist.com. You can use the coupon code THEGRAVELRIDE for 15% off. But don't take my word for it. They've got a 1-week free trial you can tap into. So really no reason not to give it a try and see if it fits into your routine. Remember, for 15% off any of their plans, it's the coupon code THEGRAVELRIDE. With that behind us, let's jump right into my conversation with Erwin. Erwin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure of being here.
I'm excited to talk to you and learn more about the UCI World Gravel Championships and a little bit of the history there. But as always, I'd just love to start out with learning a little bit about you. I know you've got a strong history in the sport of cycling. So just a quick overview of how you got involved in the sport. And then let's talk about how you got involved in kind of the event organizing side of the sport with UCI.
Yeah, so I've been a pro rider mainly in cyclocross from 1995 till 2010, so a 16-year career in cyclocross. From the age of 22 till 38. And then when I retired from cycling in 2010, I started to work as a cyclocross and also a bit a mountain bike coordinator at Golazzo. Golazzo is a Belgian sports marketing company. At that time, we were, I wouldn't say small, but yeah, it's grown a lot in the last 15 years. And so initially, I was only doing cyclocross in winter and mountain bike in summer. And then gradually, I got other projects. And in 2011, we started to talk to the UCI to well, to reform a bit the Masters Road World Championships. So yeah, everybody knows Ironman. Ironman in triathlon, you have to qualify somewhere in an Ironman worldwide to get your ticket for the World Championships. And well, the Road Masters World Championships at the UCI, they were always organized in the same city in the same period for 20 years in Austria. And there were some complaints, of course, because yeah, always the same course, the same type of riders. Yeah, World Championships should move. One day it should be a flat and fast race, and then a race for climbers or for classical riders. So we came with a proposal to reform it like in Ironman with the qualifier series, which started in 2011 with 7 qualifier events and then a World Championships. And well, it moved from 7 the next year to 13, 14, then 20. And yeah, now for next year it's 30 events. It's the biggest series we've ever had, 2024. And then
I'm curious, Erwin, when you expanded the qualification, the number of qualification races, did you end up expanding the number of athletes that could actually compete in the World Championships for the Masters?
yeah, so it has always been 25% per age group who qualify for the World Championships. So the results are made up per age group. Yeah, so from that point, yeah, first year I think we had 700 riders at the World Championships, and then it grew to over 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. And in the last few years, we are in between 2,500 and 3,000, which is still okay. 1 year, we decided to lower the percentage of qualified riders from 25 to 20 because of safety. We got 3,000 riders at the start of one single event on a day, so the Grand Fonda World Championships. But then it was 2020, the COVID year. So and afterwards, yeah, it took some time for riders to start traveling again. So we went back to 25%. And in that idea, in 2019, at the end of the season, in a debriefing with UCI, we proposed also to make up a similar series of gravel events. Gravel is big in the States. I think the first real gravel events date from 2005, 2006 or so. And we saw in Europe and other continents, but mainly in Europe, gravel has always been a bit more recreational, never competitive. And it's only, let's say, the last 5 years that there's really competitive gravel events. So yeah, at the end of 2019, we proposed a similar setup with the qualifier series leading up to a yearly World Championships, which then, well, got postponed in 2020, 2021 because of COVID. So the first season was 2022 with 11 qualifier events, and this year already 18, and next year 25. So yeah, it's growing very fast, and especially the number of participants is growing very, very fast. So and the big difference is in the Gravel World Series and also the Gravel World Championships, also elite riders can participate. So where the Grand Fonda World Series is mainly for masters and amateurs, the Gravel World Series and the Gravel World Championships is for everybody. But still in the same concept where in front there is a real battle amongst the best elite riders. But in the back, you, as a recreational rider, you can also participate. And if you're really fit and keen, and also for the Masters at a later age, you can still qualify for the World Championships. And also right there, together with, well, this year, Wout van Aert, Mohoric, Vollering, they were all at the start. So yeah, I can imagine if you start in the back and you're just 5 minutes behind these riders at the start, that it's an amazing feeling to be in the same race with all those top stars.
Yeah. I remember speaking to Bruce from the Highland Gravel Classic in Arkansas, who's the one US gravel race that's part of the UCI series this year and the coming year in 2024. And I remember walking away from that conversation with that same feeling that despite what some people in the United States may think about, high performance gravel racing, and as it may detour from their vision of a community style gravel race, as people who are around the sport and like other aspects of the sport, just being able to line up at a UCI event with the names you just mentioned would be a thrill of a lifetime.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, gravel in the States is much older and has much more tradition, and your biggest events are still bigger than the UCI events. Our biggest event this year was 1,700, and probably next year we will go over 2,000. But yeah, if you speak about the real classics, Unbound and well, you have several of them. They are more than double than our biggest race at the moment, but I think we still have potential to grow. I see that what really excites me is that after all these events, and especially after the World Championships, you hear all these top stars telling, "Hey, this was fun. Huh? Wout van Aert had big trouble, a flat tire, a crash at the World Championships, but he still continued because he liked it so much and he enjoyed riding a gravel race." So he's by the way my neighbor, huh, because he's living in the same city as me. Even well, um, if you count in miles like you do in the States, it's a bit more than a mile from where I live. And he called me and told, "Hey, I want to do a UCI gravel race because I want to do the World Championships this year." So all of a sudden, he was there at the Belgian qualifier event in August, and then 6 weeks later at the World Championships, and he really enjoyed it. And that's the good thing. They are pure ambassadors, not only for cycling sports in general, but also for gravel, because they have a lot of fun. Valverde was there. Mohoric, he said, "Well, it's my first gravel race I ever did, World Championships. I always liked going off-road, mountain bike, but in gravel, there's much more speed. It's much more fun. And yeah, I want to do this more next year, especially because, of course, he's wearing the nice rainbow jersey."
That's right. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how within the European peloton, if it follows the US, in the early days of gravel, as professional athletes started moving over, like Ted King, for example, would dabble in it. And then I think he told some of his ex Pro Tour friends that, hey, this is fun. Plus, you started to see them being able to make a career out of it. And obviously, the likes of Wout van Aert is not going to leave the Pro Tour anytime soon. But it is interesting to think about riders who are later in their career who still have power in their legs and enthusiasm in their heart to start seeing European gravel racing as a way to extend their career in a way that maybe gives them a little bit more joy than they had racing in the pro peloton after all those years.
Yeah. No, for sure. I think there are two type of riders. You have the real top stars, like Wout van Aert and like Mohoric and Demi Vollering. And I'm sure they will probably do one or two events a year when it fits in their program. But their focus will never be on gravel during the season. But, well, the position of the Gravel World Championships at the end of the road season is ideal for them to end their season. And I'm sure that one day, probably also Pogacar will be there. He was already there at the first World Championships last year, but wasn't allowed from his team to take part. But he was in the VIP area at the finish line the day after he won Tour of Lombardia. So the last classic of the season was on Saturday, and the Gravel World Championships were, well, nearby. It's only 100 kilometers away. And he really enjoyed it, and he said, "Well, I want to do this race." But yeah, it's still there's still like the feeling of, okay, this is a dangerous sport. You can crash, you can whatever, and it can jeopardize your next season. But as it's at the end of the season, I don't see really a point. You see some crashes, and yeah, that's probably part of gravel, but it's not like a major crash. It's always in small groups. Gravel is not to be compared with mountain bike or cyclocross.
Right.
It's an off-road discipline, but the type of event is much more a road race, and that's what we also see in the last 2 years. I'm having my background in cyclocross, and cyclocross is very big in Belgium. But the real the real cyclocross specialists, like the ones who do the full season of cyclocross and not focus on the road. Yeah, they usually by the end of the race, the last hour, they lose contact with the roadies. Gravel is much more a road race than it will ever be a cyclocross or a mountain bike. It's not technical at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, in my opinion, it's for the pure road specialists from the spring classics, the ones who like Paris-Roubaix, who like Tour of Flanders, those type of guys. They are the ones who are
Yeah.
the real gravel specialists.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think one thing that we've learned in racing gravel over these years is that anything can happen, and it's your ability as a rider to deal with unpredictable situations. And to your point, as a cyclocross racer, every lap there's an unpredictable situation that you have to deal with,
Yeah,
and you have to deal with nursing your bike and not being too hard on the equipment. And
yeah,
there's certainly no, there's no team car following
no,
you very quickly. Although in cyclocross, you can swap
yeah.
bikes.
You can switch bikes 2 times a lap, and you can have it cleaned and everything. So no, that's. I think it makes part of the story why it's so popular, because Wout van Aert, he lost 10 minutes at the World Championships, but he still continued, and it's more like the epic ride, like you see in Paris-Roubaix. It's kind of a survival race. And
Yeah.
even though you have a lot of bad luck in the beginning, the race is never over. You can still continue. You can still make up and close gaps, and so yeah, that feeling of like a real epic race in epic circumstances. At this moment, we had to ice the World Championships in dry circumstances, but yeah, one day we'll also have them in very wet circumstances, like you had. I think Unbound was this year in very muddy conditions. So,
Yeah.
and that will make it very epic. Uh, but to me, it's yeah. If you compare it with European cycling, it's much more a copy of what Paris Roubaix is every year.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to ask you to the extent in which you were there and understand the run up when that first World Championships event happened and the qualifiers. How were you thinking about the criteria for the course and course construction? Were there some constraints that the UCI put on the event to make it in the mold of what they were expecting?
Well, the first year, first of all, because of COVID and yeah, the let's say COVID ended, but yeah, everybody was still afraid to set up a new event, and even the World Championships. Beginning of 2022, we had a few candidates to run the World Championships, but one after another, they decided, okay, maybe it's too early. Let's skip 2022, but we'll focus on 2023 or 2024. So we found an organizer rather late, and Italy. So Filippo Pozzato, the ex-pro rider, he did a good job because it was like on a short period. He had to prepare the World Championships, but the World Championships were not the typical gravel race I know from this, doing the series. For sure, not the typical gravel race you have in the States. It was like a 50-50 road gravel race, and even the gravel was like, yeah, it was flat. It was, yeah, to me, a bit too much of a road race.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it was all last minute. I think the organizer was awarded 2 months prior to the race. Then yeah, the full process of having courses approved, having them checked, and then getting the necessary approvals from the different towns. Yeah, it took some time, and there was not really time enough to make an update, which was done this year. This year, we had to switch organizer. I was also only 2 months before the World Championships, but the course which was presented was much better than the first edition. In percentage, it was more off-road, more gravel, but also much more exciting. Flat, yeah, paved sections in between, but also a lot of elevation, and a very beautiful course. I think very different from what you have in the States. Huh? If I see the
Yeah.
images and the videos from Unbound and the American races, yeah, they are even more road racing on gravel roads. You have in percentage much more gravel roads, but it's less technical than what we see as gravel events in mainly Europe, which are I wouldn't say they are not more towards mountain bike, for sure not, but they are not wide open, big boulevards where you can ride a truck. It's always on
Yeah.
smaller, forest roads, farm roads.
Yeah.
It's more technical.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a wide diversity of gravel racing in the United States. Obviously, to your point, the Unbound may be on sort of dirt roads the
Yeah,
entire time,
and
but
that's
a
maybe the
lot of
image
these
we have
races,
from American gravel racing.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's very interesting to hear you say that, because if I'm thinking about like what you might see from an Unbound or an SBT gravel, that would very much be the takeaway I would have as well, that these are, sort of road racing style, open, wide roads that give a lot of opportunity for moving around. But if you dig into the gravel cycling world, there are a lot of events that really push the capabilities of the
Okay,
bikes
yeah,
and really create sections that have huge impact on the race based on one's technical
yeah.
abilities. So, they might go into single track, they might go into mud, they might have river crossings, all the types of things that would really push both the rider's skill levels and equipment.
Yeah, well, for the UCI, two things, of course, when we started up the UCI Gravel Series and the Gravel World Championships, one of the first things we decided is you have a few of very long endurance races. Unbound is 300 kilometers or even more, 200 miles. Um,
Yeah, 200
and
miles. Yeah.
we decided to, with the UCI Gravel World Series, to have like the typical duration of a road race. So 5-6 hours racing, not like Unbound is, I guess, 10-11 hours of racing. And that's what we
That's
are.
right.
We're not aiming for that. That's like, a very big endurance race. Our goal is to keep it in between 150 and 200 kilometers, depending a bit on the elevation and on what is available. And then a second thing is, so like single track is, it is possible when there's no alternative. So to connect two sections with a small single track towards the end of the race, it's not preferred, but if there's no other solution, then we allow it. But the big majority should be on wide open gravel roads where we can also ride a car. That's the goal of the UCI Gravel World Series.
Yeah, I certainly noticed in the race coverage this past year, and certainly commentary from both the men and women on the US team, that the narrowness of the roads, and you hear this refrain even when road cyclists go over to Europe, it's just another world when you're trying to pack 200 people into these through these narrow villages. And certainly the other big thing that stood out in some of the video I saw was some of the 180-degree switchbacks on the roads and trails that the riders had to navigate, and the chaos that ensued around that and how that impacted the race.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about the 180-degree turns. You mean now in the last World Championships?
Yeah, there was one scene that I saw the riders cutting across the earliest part of the corner to get around and join the group.
Yeah, there
It
were
looked
some.
quite visually
Well,
stunning.
it's the famous YouTube video from the first half an hour of the Gravel World Championships in the elite category. Yeah? I don't know. I think it's from an
Yeah.
American rider who filmed it with his GoPro.
Yeah, I think it's from
Yeah,
Payson
yeah,
McKelvin.
and
Yeah.
it gives a good idea of the hectic in the start, huh? And of course, well, our courses are not fenced; they are just marked with signs, huh? And everybody has a GPS device on his bike. So that's, yeah. Well, I presume it's also the same in the States. Huh? You don't have tape to prevent riders from cutting corners. So I think that's the spirit of gravel. So it's only in the first 10-15 k in the course. But next year, because then we are ourselves the organizers. So the company I'm working for, Golazzo, is organizing the next World Championships in Belgium. It will hardly be impossible to cut corners there in the first part of the race, and where it's possible, we'll probably also try to prevent it without making too much. Yeah, it's never the goal to make like a fenced cyclocross or mountain bike course. That's not our goal. But yeah, different type of racing I've done. Yeah, because I'm managing these races, and I'm of course also ex pro rider, so I take my bike to a lot of these events and try to ride them to get a good impression on the different type of events. If I compare our events, which are in the series, there's indeed a lot of different events. Next year we will also organize the Belgian Gravel Championships, which are very typical American style, unbound style gravel racing, which is very uncommon in Belgium. But yeah, in the north there's like a section where we can have those kind of races. So there's a bit of a difference, but yeah, the good thing about gravel is that you can have very technical races, but the majority are on wide open roads, fast. You don't need to be too technical. If you see Mohoric winning the World Championships, although I think he's very technical as a rider, as a roadie, but also Jasper Staven winning the first European Championships. I don't think he's very technical as a roadie. So yeah, it's something which can suit any road specialist.
Gotcha. And when you think about the courses in the men's courses and the women's courses, as I understand it, they differed in distance. Can you talk a little bit about the logic behind that?
Well, I know that in the States, and also let's say in general in English speaking countries, it's also the same in Britain and in Australia. There's a big movement to have women and men having the same distance. If you see at cycling in history, and then I mean from 50 years back, and even now, all disciplines, being cyclocross, mountain bike, road, women and men have different distances for the World Championships and World Cups. You can be. It's worth a discussion. I know that in the English-speaking countries, there's more a vote to have them equal, but I don't think gender equality doesn't mean that they have to have the same distance. I think the media attention should be the same, and the prize money should be the same, but the distance, if you have the women racing over 260 to 170 kilometers, the road world championships, it would give a totally different dynamic, and it would mean a much more individual race by the end of the race, because then it's pure endurance. Well, for the man, it's another type of race. So I'm not really convinced if they should have the same distance for men and women.
Are you thinking about it in terms of time? Are you shooting for a similar amount of time out there on the bike for both the men
No,
and
not
women?
even time. We did many surveys amongst the participants after the World Championships, both in Grand Fonda and gravel. And if you ask women if they prefer to have the same distance as men, probably Americans and Australians, they would go for the same distance. But it depends also a bit on what riders prefer. Everybody is if you're somebody who has a great endurance, you will pick the same distance as the man. If you're more explosive and you're more a tactic, a strong sprinter type of rider, you prefer a shorter course. So, but in general, we see that if we ask women directly, our participants, that the majority still prefers a shorter distance for women.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting debate, and I'm certainly not one to opine too strongly one way or the other, but I do imagine that you have more dynamic racing in the shorter
Yeah,
distances, and
that's
I'm
what
sure I'll
I'm
get people complaining with me about this.
referred to. So
Yeah.
I don't know, women on the road, for instance, the road world championships now in Glasgow for women. I don't know, but I think they were 150, 160, and men were 260. In general, they were around that distance. But if you have the women also on the 260, well, it will be a pure endurance race, and by the end, there's a big chance that there will be one by one. So, and then Annemiek van Vleuten can start racing again because she's this super strong rider who survives everybody by the end of the race when it's a very hard race.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worth the discussion. But if you ask the riders, I think the majority will still prefer to have a shorter distance for women because it's indeed another dynamic.
Yeah. When you think about, and I do want to get into the masters element of this because I think that's fascinating. And for our listeners who are non-professional athletes, I think it's a great and interesting opportunity. But one final question at the elite level, how do you determine how many riders an individual country can bring to the event?
Well, so the basic goal is that everybody should qualify. But in order to promote the first editions of the World Championships to also have national teams and the federations involved, in 2022 and also this year, the UCI decided to grant 20 wildcards to every national federation for riders. So in the past 2 years, now 2022, 2023, they could be used by any rider. So also the masters and the age group riders. For 2024, it will only be limited for the elite category. And gradually, it's our goal to limit the number of wildcards. So riders should really be encouraged to qualify. But on the other hand, first year we had Peter Sagan, we had Mathieu van der Poel, we had Greg van Avermaet all participating. And without those wildcards, they wouldn't have been there. Pauline Ferrand-Prévot,
Yeah.
this year Vollering, Wout van Aert, Wout qualified, but the other riders, Mohoric, we were really happy with them at the start. So we want to keep a certain amount of wildcards for the top level riders. And yeah, we'll see from year to year, evaluate after every edition of the World Championships if we have to stick to, I don't know, maybe 10 wildcards maximum per country or more wildcards for the bigger countries, less wildcards for the smaller countries. But this year we also had riders from Guinea-Bissau and from Barbados and like very exotic countries at the start. And they wouldn't have been there without these wildcards. So I'm still in favor of having them, but maybe limit them a bit more so that riders really are encouraged to have to go to a qualifier.
And you mentioned that qualification. It sounds like it's standard across the board. If you finish at a UCI Gravel World Cup qualifier event in the top 25%, you've punched your ticket to go to the World Championships.
Yeah, the only change next year is that in the first 2 years, qualification was always per age group. But then we saw this year Valverde. He's in the meantime 42 years old, so he then had to qualify in the 40 to 44 age category. And okay, the two races he did were not the biggest one. I think the one in the two in Spain he won were like 500-600 riders at the start. So then it's still okay to have him in the front. But well, as these events grow bigger and bigger, we decided to also have the elite category as part of the qualifier series. So before every race, you have to choose, okay, I want to go and qualify for the World Championships Elite or for my age group. So like a rider being 19 to 34 years old, if he chooses to sign up for the elite category, of course, with an elite license, then he can only qualify for the elite category at the World Championships. If he chooses to qualify or to sign up for the age groups, he can only qualify for his age group. And that's what we decided this year to change, so that the elite category can also have all the riders in their 30s, 35, 40 years old, like Valverde, like many of them will retire from road racing, like Jan Bakelands, Nicky Terpstra, probably also a lot of Americans who are over 35 but still want to race elite at a high level. So they then get the opportunity to race elite.
You may have mentioned this earlier, but just so I understand, on race day, are the amateur men lining up behind the elite men and starting kind of alongside them?
Yeah, at the qualifier events, Well, there are different options, and we give a lot of freedom to the different organizers to set up, or the setup of the start can either be men elite in front, followed by women elite, and then with a small interval, the age groups. Or we can have men elite followed by men age groups, let's say until the age of 50, and then the women elite, all with a small interval. But it depends a bit on the size of the field. And yeah, I think next year our biggest event will be over 2,000. So then you have to make some rules to make a fair start and a fair race. But we still give the opportunity to riders without a license to qualify for the World Championships in their age group. So it's only for the elite category that you need a license. If you want to race in the age groups and you're 42 years old and you still want to do World Championships, you can go to a qualifier, take part, and then qualify for the World Championships. And it's only to sign up for the World Championships that you need a year license. So not to qualify.
Gotcha. Yeah, super exciting. Let's talk about the 2024 Trek UCI Gravel World Series calendar.
Yeah.
You've expanded now to a total, is it a 26 events?
Yeah, well, there's indeed 25 qualifying for the 2024 World Championships. And one was in October past the World Championships for the 2025 World Championships. But yeah, we have been expanding with a lot of extra races. So if I look at the list, one extra in Austria, one extra in Italy. I'm running over the list here now on my computer. There's a new race in Kenya. There's a new race, a second new race in Germany, Switzerland, one in Wales, in the UK. And then by the end of the season, also a second new one in Spain. And there will most likely be two extra ones being added later, which still are struggling with approvals. So yeah, this it's no secret that there's one candidate in Rwanda where the World Championships on the road take place next now in 2025, and a second one in Switzerland. They will most likely be added in the next few weeks.
What does it take for an event to become part of the series? And are these events typically events that have run in the past and then embrace the UCI series and come to you and say, I'd like to be part of it? Or are they events that happen from the ground up with the sole intention of being a UCI qualifier?
It's a mix. We have existing events who have been run as a competitive event before. We have fun events like leisure events, like non-competitive events who have been switched to a competitive event. We have big organizers who have run professional road racing or Grand Fonda racing, like the race in Switzerland is run by the same team who has the UCI Grand Fonda for many years. So new events who have all of a sudden started up. The second race in Germany, for instance, has run the mountain bike marathon World Championships 5 years ago or 6 years ago, 2017. So it's a mix, yeah.
And then, obviously there's presumably an application process for the event to become part of the series. Do the events then need to take on that same kind of men will race by themselves, women will race by themselves, the distance will be within certain parameters?
Yeah.
Is that how they have to adopt to the UCI landscape?
Yeah, well, but as I told, we're not too difficult in these first years. We don't want to. The big criticism we had, especially from the States in the beginning, is, well, UCI will make it too much regulations and things like that. And well, we decided not to make any regulation. So the bike is free, of course, no e-bike, but if you want to race a mountain bike or a gravel bike or a road bike, whatever bike you like, the perfect bike that fits best for that course is free to use. Distance, well, there's a rule now. I think the minimum distance is 75k and the maximum 200. But for the rest, there's no regulation on tire width starting procedure is also quite flexible. We discuss it with every organizer, but we are pretty flexible in allowing things.
Gotcha. One of the things that struck me when I looked at the 2024 calendar was we still only have one event here in the United States.
Yeah.
Is that intentional? Is it just
No,
the market
because
for events? And
let's say that we would like to have in the big traditional cycling countries in Europe 2 events, like we have now 2 in Belgium, 2 in Holland, 2 in Germany, 2 in Switzerland, 2 in Italy, 2 in Spain, only 1 in France, 2 in the UK. And then for the big countries like the States, Canada, or Australia, we can go up to 3 events. And I've been in very good contacts with potential interested organizers who have started the process of having different online meetings with me, but also, of course, on their side, getting the approvals and speaking to their sponsors. And we have been very close with one organizer, to finally become the second qualifier. And I'm sure that in 2025 we will have at least 2, probably even 3 events. And also in Canada, I'm in touch with a second Canadian event, which is likely to sign, and which I had expected to sign already for 2024. But it's also the same in Grand Fonda racing. It's more challenging for me to convince an American organizer to join the series. A part of it is because, well, there is like let's say a general criticism in everything which is related to regulations and to federations within the States. That's what I learned from my different contacts. People don't like to be too regulated, although I think we are quite flexible. And another big thing is in Europe, there is for organizers who are speaking about the financial part of the of organizing an event, is in the States there's not such a system of government funding. So in Europe, but also in Africa, we have 3 African events, 2 in Australia. Organizers apply for fundings with the city, the region, or an entity from the government, which puts in money to promote events of a high level, but also because they generate a lot of tourism. If I see that this year, the European Championships, we organized ourselves on the 1st of October. Well, we had 1,700 riders coming from, I don't know exactly, 30 or 35 different countries, but they all stay in a hotel for a few nights because they want to do a recon ride a few days before. They stay after, they go and have dinner, they buy a souvenir, they rent a car. So there's a lot of economic return for the region, and that system doesn't really exist in the States, as far as I know from my contacts with different organizers.
it's true. I've talked about this on a number of occasions with different event organizers, and it is super interesting. Like, there are some rural regions that are trying to reinvent themselves, where you do get some of that interplay with the local city government, and great deal of enthusiasm to bring riders in, because having 1,000 people and their families over a weekend is a great economic boom for those cities. And then in other cases, you have the exact opposite mentality, which is, we don't want any more people coming here. We don't need athletes to come into our town. Particularly, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, and
which is really a pity. I think
very much so.
Sports in general, especially, well, I'm living in Belgium, which is probably the cycling country, together with Italy and France. We have every little town has its own club and has at least a competitive rider, and this you have to drive maximum 1 hour to do a race on Saturday and Sunday in every discipline. So that's the good thing about living in a traditional cycling country, but also for organizers. Excuse me. The fundings we have are necessary to set up big events, and they are live on television. It's part of our culture. They generate, as I told you, a lot of economic return, but not only economic return, it's also promotion for the region. If you have like a very nice uh, yeah area with a beautiful nature, it's a good promotion for the region to generate also other type of tourism. The race we now
Yeah.
organize on the 1st of October, which will also fit the first, no, the next World Championships next year, in Belgium. Yeah, it's a national park. It's a big forest area. It's being promoted now through these kind of events and the weeks before, but especially the weeks after the European Championships we organized there. It was full of people, hiking, riding their bikes, and they also come, and then it generates tourism, and tourism means money for the region, and
Yeah.
that's
Exactly.
the good thing about cycling in Belgium, for instance.
Yeah. Yeah. If I was to sort of read the tea leaves, so to speak, about the US gravel cycling scene sentiment around the UCI Gravel World Championships and the qualifier events, I would say I am reading a marked change this year after the event.
Yeah,
We sent some of our best athletes over there. There was good exposure. Obviously, we wish that the women's race was able to be televised, but I understand what happened there. But seeing the scene and seeing the camaraderie of the US team, I believe, has translated to a sort of a general uplifting of the UCI brand within
yeah,
gravel, and this idea that the racing is different. It's different and unique in its own way, and the experience is quite
yeah,
powerful. To go to a world level event where you're representing your country, whether it's at an elite level or at the masters level, it's just super exciting, and it's a feeling that compares differently to what it feels like to be at Unbound or SBT Gravel. It's its
yeah,
own unique and special thing
yeah.
that I
Because
think more US riders are now aspiring to.
no, I'm sure. So Unbound is the biggest gravel event worldwide, and a long tradition, and but it's still I guess a 90 or 95% based American event. Participants they come from many different countries, but the big majority is still American. If you're at the World Championships, you're first of all dressed in your national kit, which is very prestigious. It's very riders are proud, and especially Americans are proud to wear the national colors. They ride in a team, they travel towards an event, and then you're next shoulder to shoulder at the start grid, next to a British rider, an Italian, a Slovenian, a Belgian, which creates a special atmosphere. And the first year there was a lot of criticism on the course, and I agree for a part of it. I wasn't the best course. I was not also not 100% convinced on the course. This year it was pure promotion for gravel, and the fact that also your best gravel rider, Keegan Swanson, was there, was also a good promotion for our World Championships. But in the end, I'm sure that let him develop a bit longer in an international gravel scene. He'll probably he can win the World Championships for sure, and then he would be a great ambassador, wearing the rainbow jersey also in the States. So, and our biggest goal is to still, because we have been in talks with USA Cycling to bring the World Championships to the States, and there were some very interested organizers. We were very close to a deal in the first year, but unfortunately, then they were a bit hesitating and decided to skip for the next few years. But then, given the very big explosion of gravel racing in Europe, all of a sudden, it was awarded until now, 2028. So it's they missed an opportunity.
Have,
But
yeah, that's disappointing. Have you? So we know that 2024 will be in
yeah,
Belgium. Have you announced where the roadmap goes in the subsequent years?
2025 is France, Nice, so the south of France.
Yeah.
2026 is the seven event in Western Australia. which is now already part of the UCI Gravel World Series. 2027 is again the combined World Championships of the UCI, which now took place in Glasgow this past August, and they will then also have gravel, which is again in France, so the Haute-Savoie region, which is the Alps. It's if you see the mountain stages of the Tour de France, so that area, and will be a lot of climbing. That's 2027, and then 2028 is Alula in Saudi Arabia, which is a big sports city, and they have a big and huge budget to promote cycling, and especially gravel is one of their key interests. So, and then 2029, I know there's a lot of interest, hopefully one day, I'm sure that if we have a very good candidate in the States, the UCI would be very happy to have the World Championships awarded to the States, because, well, in the end, the history of gravel racing is in the US Midwest.
Yeah, absolutely. Erwin, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate learning more about UCI's approach and everything you're doing to promote the sport. Very much appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure. It's it was nice talking to an American audience. Happy to explain what we are doing and what our plans are for the future years.
Amazing. Thanks again.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Gravel Ride podcast. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Erwin and learning about the UCI World Gravel Series. I thought it was very valuable to get his perspective. And honestly, I'm excited to see where the Gravel World Championships will grow to. I have attended not as a participant, obviously, but as a fan to a number of World Championships events on the road. And it's so exciting. It's so fun being a fan of your national colors around all those other fans from around the globe. So I hope the Gravel World Championship achieves that type of enthusiasm. And hopefully at some point, as he alluded to, we can get it here in the United States to make it easier to attend. I also need to thank this week's sponsor, Dynamic Cyclist. Remember, 15% off using the code TheGravelRide. And until next time, here's to finding some dirt under your wheels.